Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to October's edition of Native Plants at Noon, the Bioswale episode. Now, before we get into the bones of our conversation today, let's go ahead and take a moment for gratitude and some acknowledgments. We're here today at the Anita Gorman Conservation Discovery Center, obviously with Alix, Daniel, Cydney, Ross for Native Plants at Noon. But we'd like to share a special thanks to today's sponsor at the Mid-America Regional Council, an incredible group of urban planners, thought leaders, and human health and safety advocates who pave the way for social, economic, and environmental progress in our region. Through their Water Quality Education Committee grant, they are supporting Deep Roots' work in promoting and educating on native plant landscapes throughout the 9 counties and 119 municipalities that are part of this unified bi-state endeavor towards a more perfect Kansas City Metro. And for that, and for much, much more that they do, we are very grateful. And as always, to the Missouri Department of Conservation, our perpetual hosts for today and many of our Native Plants at Noon episodes. Coming to you live from the Native Landscape Mothership, the Anita B. Gorman Discovery Center at 4750 Troost Avenue in beautiful Kansas City, Missouri. We'd also like to thank each and every one of you, our individual donors and supporters, for being here with us through all our programming and being a perennially great audience for these webinars and awfully good company for what are some of the most important landscape-focused conversations being held in our region today. Now, today's hosts need no introduction, but I'll take a moment to discuss the sites that they'll be taking us through. But first, some housekeeping. This webinar will be recorded. All the resources will be made available to you online, and we'll email you a link and the resources following this event. If you have to duck out, don't sweat it. If someone can't be here with us today live, please share this information with them, a critical stormwater management landscape conversation being had live and in person in Kansas City, Missouri. Don't forget, please, drop your comments in the chat in what will be a robust banter back and forth. We'll be posting the species lists about the plants we're looking at. But put your questions in the Q&A so that our team can distinguish those. And we want to get to all of the questions that are sure to be coming from a beautiful walkabout today in the parking lot of the Gorman Center. Let me go back to the beginning here while I discuss the host site of our conversation today, the nearly perfectly constructed bioswales of the parking lot in the northeastern portion of the Anita Gorman Conservation Discovery Center campus. Now, stormwater management landscapes are like a really good bass player and a jazz combo. It's when you don't really notice it that's when they're doing their job the smoothest. In this case, conveying rainfall runoff away from our streets and our homes, our commercial buildings, in order to protect our transportation and our utility infrastructure, as well as our public human health and safety, softening the impacts of emergency management and helping to preserve our vital natural resources, all in one. Now, the bioswales at the Gorman Center are even more than that. They're indeed high-functioning stormwater management landscapes that mitigate the impacts of the built environment. And indeed, they were some of the first great examples of fully incorporated green design in our region, and they continue to be some of the most highly visible demonstrations of the green streets construction model, with thousands upon thousands of visitors each year parking their vehicles next to critical designed native plant habitat. Now, the photo here that we're looking at isn't from a remnant prairie on the fringes of the metro, but rather from a massive parking lot on the Troost corridor, next to a KFC and across from a strip mall. Arguably, an even more important place to protect and preserve pollinator and wildlife habitat with native plants, as well as to create engaging, beautiful spaces that inspire the human animals who dominate our urban core. And speaking of, let's invite 2 of my favorite human animals to join us here from the parking lot of the Anita B. Gorman Discovery Center for a native landscape bioswale convo. Sid and Alix.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
What a wonderful introduction.
Another great one.
This is perfect. Hey, everyone.
Hello.
This is Alix.
That's Cydney.
And we are here for an exciting episode of Native Plants at Noon. As Chris said, we are in the parking lot here at the Anita B. Gorman Conservation Discovery Center. And before we literally dive in to the Bioswales here, we want to show you just a couple of, let's say, fashion tips to prepare you for whether you're going into the Bioswales or you're going to go hiking.
Yeah.
So please take note. This is a great way to prevent ticks and chiggers. Everyone has their way of doing it. My shoes are not ideal, but Alix's are sturdy hiking boots. I will be filming from above mostly. But if we had foot powder like Gold Bond, we would also put that in our socks. We have our shirts tucked in as well. And we have sprayed ourselves with bug spray. So
yeah, there's a lot of chiggers in the Bioswales.
there are. So we try to do our best. Yeah.
So foot powder in your socks seems to help to keep the chiggers away.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a we don't have we're very lucky to not have ticks here at the Discovery Center, but what we lack in ticks we make up for in chiggers.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, let's dive in. Let me turn this camera around. Here we go. So you see we are in a very busy parking lot today. We've got a lot going on here at the Discovery Center. And the Discovery Center was built here in 2001, so a little over 20 years ago. And the Bioswales, there are actually 9 different sections. These are the far western ones closest to the building, but there are others throughout that are kind of more works in progress right now. So we're going to focus on the westernmost here because, frankly, they're one of my favorite places to look at our native wildflowers here at the Discovery Center. So, Al, do you want to do the honors of hopping into the Bioswale?
So we find that, so if you see the shape of the bioswale, you know, it's got a dip down, and this particular bioswale has drains underneath it. So the water is going down into the bottom and then draining out at the ends. And so we have a lot of species that are happy to be in a little bit more water than some other species. But a lot of species you would typically find on the prairie. And so you're seeing a lot of asters right now blooming. We've got a lot of our aster family. For example, we've got our New England aster. Let's just start there. Now this aster, you can see, oh, here's a little bumblebee right there. Most of these bees are European honeybees, which we have neighbors who have honeybees. So they're really loving, but I'm seeing some bumblebees, some beetles, some sulfur,
cloudless sulfur butterflies.
Yeah, they're feeding on that one over there.
Oh, yeah, link it over there.
Yeah.
So Alix, walk all the way in because I just want to give that visual. I'll stand up here.
I'm 5'8".
Alix is 5'8", 5'9".
Yeah,
she's tall. She's taller than the asters.
Yes, but only barely.
But barely. So now I'm climbing in here. And I'm about as tall as the asters. So yeah, let's get another close look at these. So there's other kinds of asters here in the Bioswale. Alix, can you talk a little bit about what else we'll find as we walk through here?
Yeah, so we also have our so the New England aster, I just wanted to mention really quickly, is one that in the Bioswales we leave it tall because it can handle being tall in here. But in other parts of our garden, we cut it back. We do the Chelsea chop and we cut it back and make it a bit shorter because it is the tallest of all of our native asters.
And due to the climate here in Kansas City, it tends to get much taller than it would in its native habitat. Yeah. So that would be why they get this tall here too. What do you see? I can't see it yet.
Fly. I don't know if you'll be able to catch it, but there's one.
Oh, I see it.
So
oh, gorgeous.
Aromatic. It might come back on if we
calm down.
Yeah, if I stop screaming at it. But this is aromatic aster, and so this is a shorter one of our asters. Again, this is more of a prairie species. New England aster, I would say, can handle a lot more water. Well, not a lot more, a little bit more water than our aromatic aster. So you'll see this aromatic aster not really growing in the middle, more growing up on the edges. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely a difference in what can survive on the edges and the way the plants express themselves versus what can survive down in the middle of these. This one I would say is one of the driest of our bioswales. The one on the end down at the northwest corner is the wettest one, and it actually supports some semi-aquatic species right in the
Interesting.
middle occasionally.
That's fun.
Yeah. And then could I show Monarda now?
Yes, there's some really
okay.
beautiful seed heads. So I just want to talk real quick. Like, you know, we're at the end of the blooming season here. We're in fall. But if any of you have visited the Discovery Center earlier in the year, May and June are some of my favorite times to see the different wildflowers blooming here. And that includes this plant here. So yeah, let's take a look at Monarda. This is wild bergamot, also known as bee balm, Monarda fistulosa. What do you what do you think about this plant?
So at this point, we do leave this plant up specifically. It's very good at keeping its shape, and it's actually still green now, but the seeds are ripening. So things are collecting the seeds. By things, I mean birds. Birds are eating the seeds.
Yeah, I see
And so
American goldfinches love the seeds.
They
and
do. They love
you can see
yeah.
that.
So this is one of our what we call our winter bird feeders. Winter bird feeders.
Yes.
So leave those bird feeders standing.
Absolutely.
If you have a patch of Monarda and you don't mind it spreading. Now in this bed, it can compete with lots of other big happy plants, and so we don't worry about it. Yeah, do you want to
Here's another big happy plant. Okay, so this is tall ironweed, and I looked up the difference because we also have Missouri ironweed. So tall ironweed is Vernonia gigantea. How do you say it?
Yeah, gigantea.
Gigantea. And then the Missouri ironweed is Vernonia mazurka, which I love to say. But the difference is when you look at the stem, mazurka is woolly and very, very hairy. Well, now that I'm looking at this, that's a great question. Maybe this one. Here we go. I'm gonna have to key this out later. It's even harder to tell when they're dry seed heads. But anyway,
yeah, there's a way to tell too from the bracts, like the scales right here, but I cannot remember. It's in that Missouri wildflower book. One of the easiest ways to tell is by these little bracts on the outside.
But regardless, either way, that sounds like some winter homework for us. But the thing I love about ironweed, not only are they have beautiful winter interest now, so fluffy, nice, beautiful gold colors, but they are also bright purple in summer through or late summer through early fall. So yeah, like Al said, we are leaving our seed heads up here to provide more winter interest, habitat, and food sources for our wildlife.
Yeah, and can I talk for a minute about goldenrod?
Oh,
I would
please.
love to hear if anybody has any opinions or corrections on this information. But what I have heard from from a couple botanists is that perhaps Canada goldenrod is a mix of Solidago canadensis, which is a wetland species, and Solidago altissimum, which is a southern species. And so they thought is that they created
a hybrid,
this goldenrod, which we call Canada goldenrod. And this goldenrod is a little bit too aggressive for a lot of our beds. But right here in this bioswale, I mean, we can't. It's so beautiful. Look at it. This huge planting, and there's so many pollinators on it, and
look at this.
Life. Isn't that just lovely?
Here, sit back here with me.
Oh, sorry.
Look at all that goldenrod. It's so bright out here.
Anyway. So yeah, normally we wouldn't let that kind of, Canada goldenrod sort of take over like that, but in this situation, it works.
It really does. So we've named just a few species that we love to have in here, but there are certain things we manage because we do want to keep it to be primarily forbs, which mean flowers. So we do remove any woody trees or shrubs. So we often will find acorns that were voluntold, as Stacia likes to say, rather than volunteer trees, right? Because probably a squirrel or a blue jay planted it in the bioswale. So we do remove those frequently. But we also deal with, poison ivy, which is one of our native plants, but as you all know, is not really a fun plant to deal with here in the landscape. And actually, I'll come back to that one because I do see we have blackberry here, which is another one.
Another beautiful color, and there's poison ivy, right?
Oh, perfect.
Right? Or is that more black?
No, it's more blackberry. There's a nice patch of colorful poison ivy elsewhere, but this looks a lot like poison ivy. This is actually blackberry, our native blackberry. It's got the thorns. You can see here. and it does produce little fruits. But as you can imagine, weeding it is it can be kind of a pain. So we do try to stay on top of that.
Yeah, we don't want to encourage any vining growth in here because vining growth from things like blackberries or bindweed is ultimately going to pull down all the vegetation and make things look not good.
Yeah,
Later in the fall.
absolutely.
Ideally, we leave this up for the whole fall and then cut it back in early spring.
Yeah, we leave it through the winter. Again, it's got that really important wildlife habitat.
Yes, we have birds that nest in it and wildlife that take shelter. We saw a lot of our lovely snakes. They love living in the parking lot because it's nice and warm.
Okay, and actually before we move on to the other section where we can show you just a couple more species, including the poison ivy, this is common milkweed, Asclepias syriaca, and watch doing its thing. Just spreading the seed. So I typically teach a class on winter beauty, planting your garden for winter interest, and this is one of the plants. If you have it and if you have an appropriate site and it's part of your goals, I definitely encourage it for that, because I love just the shape of the seed pods. They stand upright, and of course when they release their silk, it's very whimsical and beautiful.
So fun.
But something interesting about common milkweed, same with world milkweed, those are two species of milkweed that not only spread by seed but by runners.
Did you see that Gara is blooming? Do we have time to show it really?
Yes. Okay, this one's not on the list. Apologies, but
sorry, I just saw it blooming today. We gotta go.
This is one we remove also. So
Yeah,
we're gonna. It's such a beautiful one, though.
Special treat to see it
let's see.
today. Oh my god.
Okay, can you hold one still?
Kinda. Let's see if I can. Here's one.
Okay. See this?
Very pretty.
This is guara. So this is an Anithera, right? Primrose.
Yes, a primrose.
And this is not to be confused with the Anithera biennis, which is on our list, which we will show you. But this is another type of primrose, also is the common name. But you see it's pink. It gets really tall. It's got some gorgeous foliage, though.
I would say it looks like a hummingbird plant to me, doesn't it? Or
it is moth pollinated.
Moth pollinated. Wow.
Yes.
That
Imagine
makes
that,
sense.
doesn't it? So that is one we would remove because it is a little too robust for the space. We might leave it here for a couple days just so that we can enjoy its blooms and see what moths come to it at night.
Yes.
But then we will remove it.
We had it growing in a section of bed that got redone in the last couple of years. And when we cut that out, I thought it was gone forever, but now it's back and it's in this one. They kind of just show up like that all the time.
They really
and that's
do.
another thing I wanted to talk about was in the bioswales, we do find the wildest things because seeds are coming from everywhere, including the community gardens across the street. Birds are bringing things in from all over the neighborhood. People are coming in with cars and boots. Can you imagine Cydney and I going on a hike and then taking our boots off in here? So that's how we get Sericea
Yeah. So we haven't seen it recently, but it does show up. So hey.
To that point, you just brought up something that I think answers one of our questions very directly from Sarah. Are people from the public allowed to collect seeds from the Gorman site? And for so many reasons, but give me just a handful of the ones, starting with no, because who knows what's on your shoes, and then go from there. Winter interest, etc.
Yeah, so we do not allow seed collection at the Discovery Center. We have 9 acres of native gardens here, which is great, but we need to keep the seed here as much as possible, not just so plants will continue to come back year after year, but also so our wildlife has access to those food sources when things are scarce in winter time. They can't just rely on our bird feeders, as helpful as it is supplementally. They really need our native flowers that produce these seeds that they can eat to get through the winter. And our wildlife has evolved with our native plants as such that the plants in wintertime have the nutrition they need. So they're higher in lipids, higher in proteins. I just wrote an article in the Pollinator about invasive bush honeysuckle and why that's not a good food source. You can read that on our website, but it kind of talks about that how our native plants have evolved to offer the things our native birds need. So
You can come collect honeysuckle here anytime you want.
to get, well, actually
Okay,
that's
I'm kidding, but can I
that's
make-
no, that's a good segue
Yes.
though. We do have a work
Oh,
day for
yes.
honeysuckle removal on the 25th. So if you want to learn
Yes.
about that,
Next month is honeysuckle removal month because it's really easy to see during the November when everything else has lost its leaves. But can I also plug working for the seed team for Casey Wildland seed team, because that's a great way to get to know different seeds and get to know how to collect seeds in a responsible way and
ethical way.
ethical way, and get involved in that for yourself. So
Yeah, absolutely. But we appreciate you asking.
yes, thank you for not coming.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes we do in the winter time put out like a winter sowing station, so you can come take seeds that we have gathered and collected to give to the public. So that is a great option for that. Yeah. Do we cover all the bases there, Chris?
I think that touches on a lot of the points. In addition to, we don't want thousands of people walking in our landscapes every year.
That
Right?
is
If it
true
were one person's garden, a different story than a public space like that, which is visited by hundreds of people every day.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah,
at-
look
at
I mean,
scale.
look at the parking lot. This is just
I know.
part of it. You can't even see
This
all
is
of
just,
it.
we have 2 classes here today. We have so many kids here today and another big meeting. And yeah, you're right. It's just, it's a lot. But we make our, at the Discovery Center, if y'all haven't been here before, we really focus on making the wildlife, or not the wildlife, but the flowers accessible so that there are plenty of places to get up and close and personal. Now, don't go in these bioswales.
Unless you're
I think
helping
we're
us with the
scaring you.
work day.
Yes.
But yeah.
But for one reason, here's a good reason not to go into the bioswales.
Well,
Can I?
yeah, this is again one of our native. Oh, there's grasshoppers everywhere out. Okay. So here is the poison ivy plant. Again, native, really important for our songbirds, but makes me very itchy. I am very allergic to it. I didn't used to be, but more exposure has made me more allergic. And it is a vine. The way we handle this, when they're small, we just grab a plastic bag, usually wear long sleeves, and we will grab it by the root and pull it out. But in this case, we may selectively treat with herbicide just because it is pretty expansive in this one section. But again, that's not to worry, right? That's not really an issue because this is a space that is supposed to be more natural, and we're not really supposed to be climbing in it, and it doesn't affect or hurt the wildlife. In fact, it supports it. So that's just one of the things we manage in here.
Yeah, like I said, we do shy away from spraying. We do everything we can not to spray.
We do.
We do shy away from it, especially in areas where there's going to be water.
Well, true, but if we were to spray, and when we do, we make sure to look at the forecast and make sure there's absolutely no chance of rain, because you're right, that could have a horrible effect, right? Because all this water is coming down here, and though it's not ending up right into our waterways, it is going down into our earth. So, and maybe if there is drainage, then maybe some of it is leaching out if it were. So
yes, that's why, it's so important. Oh, there you are.
Here's the one. So this is another primrose. This is Anita biennis, common evening primrose. It looks very different than Anita macrocarpa, which is a Missouri, which is the sun.
This is tall.
Yeah. So this is a biennial, and we do manage this by pulling it, removing it. It is very cute, but again, it's one of those plants that is so robust, it would just fill the space and take over. And
even if we pull all of them, it still will bloom every year.
Every year.
That's just part of management too, is like, we know when things are not going to be a huge issue year after year. Based on when we can take the seeds out and knowing the plant itself.
That's right.
That's a nice plant.
So knowing this plant, little blue stem, I'm gonna try to say it without hurting myself. Oh my gosh, I'm hurting myself. Sicarium scoparium. What gosh, can you say it?
You're so close.
Say it for me, Al.
It's Schizachyrum.
Schizachyrum scoparium. Thank you. have typed that so many times this week, but I can't say it
I
still.
had it for my password for a while, not anymore, but no, I did. That's how I learned.
So I love this. This is one of our tall grass species, but it's the shortest of them.
Yeah, shortest of the big fours.
Shortest of the big four. So look how cute that is. Goes up to like just above the knee.
Yeah.
And the
planted
fall
it-
color is beautiful.
It is. Sorry to interrupt. We planted it up here on the edges with the asters. And like I said, it really doesn't spread down into the middle, I think, because it's a little bit too wet. But right up here on the edge of the curb, it's so hot right here.
Mhm.
It's hot. Everything in this bioswale blooms like a week earlier than it does in other parts of the landscape, and 2 weeks earlier than it does in other, like in the outer suburbs of Kansas City. So it's really kind of fun to watch a heat island effect because we get early flowers.
It's a microclimate, right?
That's right. Can we talk about
Well,
yeah.
so real quick though, something to note, you've already touched on there's different microclimates within these bioswales.
Mhm.
So if you viewers are planting something similar to this, like maybe a rain garden, maybe not something as big as a bioswale, but you know, on a smaller scale, you might consider that some of the species on the edge will need to be drier and some in the center will need to be able to handle times of flooding and times of drought. So those are honestly, rain gardens are fascinating to me and a nice challenge I'd love to take on someday, just for that reason alone. But in this case, we kind of get to let the things that work come through and then edit the ones that we don't want in here depending on our goals.
That's
So
right.
this is one we didn't have on the list either, but we should talk about.
Can we chat about it real quick?
Yeah.
This is gray-headed coneflower. You want to say it?
Rabbit
Rabbit
pinata. Rabbit pinata.
And it's already, you can see the seed heads are here. Look at this. The
They're
seed
so
heads are already
beautiful.
getting picked at. They're becoming ripe and they're already getting pecked at by the birds.
And before it lost its petals, it was yellow. And it's just a beautiful, again, gorgeous winter interest, right?
Very beautiful.
Good
I think
food
it
source.
stands so nicely, and watching the finches land on it, they're just a little bit too heavy, and it sags, and it's really fun.
It's really funny. What else? Okay, I do see one more plant I want to talk about, and then we might go ahead and jump into some questions. The tall bone set right here is one of them. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a plant you might find in your backyard. It's not one, well, maybe nurseries sell it, but tall bone set, and it has white flowers, and it gets a little tall, like three-ish feet tall, 4 feet maybe. You have any thoughts on this plant?
Yeah, so I think this plant, along with white snake root, are really important plants for our nocturnal pollinators. And like Cydney talks about all the time, just look at the shape of that flower, the color of it. We're probably talking about nocturnal pollinators. I don't even see any pollinators on it right now.
So yeah, that's something to point out. White is able to reflect the light of the moon, of the street lamps, of things like that, and the stars, and allows our nocturnal pollinators like moths and flies to find them.
Yeah.
And then but during the day, white doesn't typically attract bumblebees as well as like yellows and purples, but what it does attract are pollinating wasp friends.
That's right.
So I know people can be scared of wasps sometimes, but they're some of my favorite pollinators to observe because they're very gentle when they're on their flowers and doing their own thing.
Yes, and Cydney, you just told me last night, we always say how lucky we feel to live in Missouri because there's very few things that can actually kill us compared to other places in the world. And where we're looking at Costa Rica.
Oh yeah, Costa Rica.
Where they have
there are all kinds of wasps, like really interesting
so
insects.
In Kansas City, we only have one
like aggressive social wasp.
But in other countries, they have several types of aggressive wasps. So I'm glad all we have to worry about is yellow jackets,
right?
The other ones don't pay us any attention.
They pay no mind, and those aren't the ones necessary. Well, they might be pollinating things, but they just come in all cool shapes and sizes and colors and designs. Oh, and I take it back, Chris. There's one more plant I want us to talk about just because I learned a new fact about it today. Can we find some dogbane?
Well, sure thing, but we already just put it all out.
What? No, I thought there was some yesterday. Oh, I see some right here.
Oh yeah, there's.
Okay. All right. The journey through, oh, there's a cloudless sulfur, that yellow butterfly you see. They have the craziest um chrysalis. They look like strawberry lemonade. They're like pink and yellow. Okay, back to dogbane. So here's dogbane. This is such an interesting plant. Okay, so Al, did you know? You probably already knew this part, but dogbane is in the same family as milkweed,
Right.
which makes sense because when you break a little piece off. Okay. So when you break it off, it releases oh, there's some milky, yeah, you can see there. Some milky latex sap, just like our milkweeds. And it is toxic, just like our milkweed. So guess who feeds on this plant, Al?
Who?
Lots of moths, like the dogbane tiger moth. And it is so cute. I will send you all a photo of it in your resources later. But they eat this plant in order to become toxic to deter predators from predation, right? From eating them. So I thought that was really interesting. There's also really cool things you can do with this plant in terms of cordage or rope making. So if you join us for our winter programs at the Discovery Center, you can see that. And then I think, doesn't it also have, yep, here we go. It's got the silk too, just like our milkweed.
And I love the seeds on
do
dogbane. They're so
too.
funny. They're really long little sticks.
They're so
Can you see
tiny. Yeah, I
one?
see them. Very cool.
Very nice.
Anyway, so that's the last one. That is one we manage out of here. But
but that
it's
actually brings up a fun point, is that some of our management technique is removing these species to use for things like this. So yeah, the dogbane is we use for a bunch of different cordage projects and throughout the year. So we do let it, we don't dig it out, we just cut it down when we need it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris, we're gonna crawl out of the bioswales and go up to the parking lot, and we are happy to take some questions if we've got some. Cute.
Well, yeah, I really like that. Again, we continue to point out that the uses for these landscapes are public in programming as well. So such a critical reason to be more delicate in our approach as guests to the Gorman Center's landscapes, not to harvest or forage or collect, except for service berries when I want to eat them.
Like me and the robins for
Yeah.
No, so just kidding. Great question that we haven't touched on yet. How long ago was this landscape built? Because I highlighted that in the introduction. This is one of the earliest examples that I'm aware of really high touch, beautiful, extremely visible stormwater management landscape. How old is this bioswale landscape garden?
So the bioswales themselves are 20 years old. This is the third planting of these two particular bioswales that we told you. So we've learned a lot since the Discovery Center was opened in 2001, and we've made some mistakes on the landscape, just like is going to happen. And so we've had to redo certain sections of them a few different times, a few different sections, right, I should say. And so yeah, this one, we haven't been, since I've worked here for 7 years, and it was pretty well established when I started. So, but this is the third planting of this particular one.
Yeah. Let's actually stand this way so we're not staring at the sun.
Oh, okay.
Great second point to that as well. What would you do differently? And in a stormwater management landscape, these things take a beating. I mean, you're talking road salts, you're talking oil and antifreeze that leaks out of cars. Everything in the environment is all being funneled into this landscape. And so these plants are just taken right on the chin each time, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So they have to be really resilient. And so I'm newer here at the Discovery Center, having only been here for 3 years. And I would say, just for my short time seeing here, what I can tell you is what I love about the bioswales. Is the diversity of forbs, the diversity of flowers seen throughout the seasons in here, despite the difficult conditions. So
yeah.
But yeah, I would say maybe noticing one plant we didn't talk about actually was what we call prairie ochre, formerly known as Indian grass. That was planted in here initially?
No,
that just showed up.
If you flip the camera, I don't know. Can you see
I'll flip
it's not actually in. It's only in this one.
That tall grass back there.
Yeah. So you can't really see it, but there, just one note is, maybe you can see this in the photo, but between this front bed and the bioswale, there's a dry creek bed right here. So this kind of is where the water runs in at each end right here. So it is fascinating to think about what can survive here. We always talk about, right plant, right place. We would never be able to put little delicate things in this section right here. You can see
all of our big
happening.
robust friends.
Yes, all of our ironweeds.
All the ones that people say are too aggressive,
Yes.
which we don't say that about our native plant
we
friends.
say so happy.
We say they're so enthusiastic.
Yeah, Monarda, goldenrods, ironweed, the sorghastrum, those are all doing great in these really, really rough sections. And you're right. It gets a lot of salt and snow. The snowpack. We push the snow into the drains too. And so there's usually if we get a nice storm, there's usually a big melting cold situation for a while. And I will say that what we did with this one was, like Cydney said, we varied the forbs. We've been seeding and planting more diversity into these. And if you see the bioswales behind us, those are the ones in progress. They were planted as shrub monocultures. And we all know how I feel about monocultures. Boo! And so they don't work because, two of them were planted a beautiful shrub, but red 9-bark, which the opposite of red 9-bark is green weeds. And so the monoculture of red shrub with the contrast of the green weeds,
it was bad. It didn't for our goals as a public place that's supposed to welcome folks.
Yeah, and we don't want to be constantly weed whacking and spraying,
using all kinds of resources we just don't need to use.
Mulching things. Yeah. That's not our game.
No, it's not.
So anyway, we're rethinking about we're coming together and figuring out a new plan for those bioswales. So come see those works in progress.
Yeah, I do like we do have a monoculture of little blue stem over there, but we do maintain.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work to maintain. Okay, we're walking back over here to the
fantastic. Another consideration in stormwater management, and this is more so in critical cold water climates like the Pacific Northwest, the Rocky Mountains, but the runoff that comes from our built environment has not only a pollutant load that is unnatural, but also a temperature swing that can really, really mess with fish habitat, for example, invertebrates who rely on a particular window of temperature in their water systems. So July rain shower, the water that's coming off that parking lot is like 80 degrees. It's like bath water full of pollution.
Yes. It's a nasty cocktail.
Yeah, we were right by Brush Creek too, and we have unfortunately we have fish die-offs for, I'm guessing that's the reason. You can tell me, Chris, but not in our area, but on Brush Creek.
Just from the pollution around town, and the runoff going in there.
Right. Yeah.
Excellent. Do you want to take a conversation question, a whole slew of conversation questions about goldenrod? Canada goldenrod is, again, not necessarily from Canada, but it is native throughout the state of Missouri and eastern Kansas. Talk about the pollen. It's just coming up here left and right. Is goldenrod pollen so heavy that it does not float on the air? Somebody at church swears that their doctor says they're allergic to goldenrod.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
To go on a walk with us.
Please come on a walk with us, Dr. Goldenrod.
Right.
But you want to show ragweed?
Dr. Goldenrod.
Yeah. I'll bring
it.
Okay. So while Alex is grabbing ragweed, which is responsible for your fall allergies, I'll just tell you, goldenrod is one of the most important fall plants that we have for our pollinators, not just the ones that migrate through like monarchs, but also our local residents, right? Skippers and hair streaks and all kinds of bees and wasps. They all need this pollen. And just like the birds in the winter need certain types of seeds and berries to get through the harsh conditions, so do our wildlife. And that's why these fall bloomers like goldenrods and asters are so important to have in our landscape, because it makes it so much harder if they don't have food to even get started through the winter. A lot of them won't survive without it.
Yeah.
And who do we have here?
Hello. You guys are very special. I'm holding this plant. I'm very allergic to it. I have to get my nose spray out after this.
Yes.
So this is the plant you're actually allergic to.
Very
This-
different. This
very
one's
different.
obvious. This is the one you see when you're driving,
Yes.
but the pollen's too heavy. The pollen is collected by pollinators. It's
Yeah.
not wind pollinated like this guy.
And there's a lot of differences in the flower of these two, but notice the main difference. This one is green and boring, and that one is yellow and beautiful. So that yellow goldenrod is attracting every pollinator you can think of. This green ragweed is attracting nobody because it doesn't need anybody. It just pollinates by the wind. So see, the wind dangles these. I don't know if I can show you how tiny the little flowers, but they hang down. They have barely any petals, and all it does is the wind blows the pollen out of those little flowers
Up your
and
nose
up your nose
and around the
and-
corner.
around the corner, and then pollinates itself or another plant further away. So this is what you're actually allergic to.
Yeah,
Um,
not these.
not these. These get a bad rep. They just bloom at the same
Yeah.
time.
I will say though, if you have a small, more formal garden, this may not be a good choice for you.
Can we show? Can we
But-
show? Yeah, can we show Cliff Goldenrod real quick?
We can, yeah, but I was gonna say something you can do though.
Yes.
Why not Chelsea chop Canada gold?
Yeah.
Then
Who's gonna stop
then
you?
what then wouldn't that make it more formal, give you those formal qualities? I think it's a great plant. You can also make ink out of it. That's
That's
another
true.
conversation for later. But
In medicine, it's a very useful plant, but
it smells good.
it does smell good. But maybe cut the seeds off.
Just kidding.
Where they go.
Yeah.
But can we show you a short goldenrod really quick? Can we show 'em?
Yeah.
Because there's a different goldenrod for every garden. So every situation you have, there's a good goldenrod for. So this one is called Cliff Goldenrod, and it's the shortest. Well, kind of the shortest, in that it sort of has this beautiful fountainy shape. And you
I
can
love
see
it.
all the pollinators. There's a mock, a bee mimic.
That's just
What'd
a
you call that,
fly.
bee mimic?
I would just call
that's
that a
just
big
straight up
old
fly.
Beautiful
So you
fly.
can- yeah, flies, bees, everybody's pollinating this. So I recommend this goldenrod for a shorter alternative, but same color, same general shape, but just much better for a formal garden.
Yeah. What other? There's other goldenrods too, like
Yeah,
zigzag,
zigzag.
showy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
zigzag is short. There's woodland goldenrod if you have a
Oh,
shady
cute! I love
situation.
woodland goldenrod.
Yeah, and then there's some taller ones too, like stiff goldenrod that you can also Chelsea chop. You can Chelsea chop all the goldenrods.
Yeah,
But-
that's a really good one to chop.
Yeah, but get a goldenrod. You have to.
You have to have goldenrods and asters, and they look good together too.
They do. Yellow and purple. Hooray.
I'm just gonna flip the camera over to this diagram to show you all while we queue up the next question. This is our interpretive sign here about our bioswales. And this is kind of a diagram to show you a cross section of what that looks like.
Excellent segue. Richard's touched on the technical elements of bioswale design. Would you focus
wonderful.
on that sign one more time for us, please?
Absolutely.
So at the very base, and that I often, when teaching about stormwater management landscapes, I describe it as like a layer cake, right? You've got your subsoil, the natural soil there at the bottom. That's the contact, the existing soil profile, which goes directly into the groundwater. But in between that, we have a base layer of gravel. Richard's question specifically, assuming that the base of the bioswale is gravel covering a drainage pipe, right? So that's
It's rock.
It's like big rock.
It's bigger rock. It's bigger than gravel, just with the scale of it. It's like that rock we showed you.
Well, I don't actually in the bottom. I don't know because it's at this point it's buried by layers and layers of mulch
Oh, that's true.
and debris
stuff.
because
Yeah.
we don't get to burn. But
perfect.
it's probably gravel right there. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, generally in these bioswales, there is a fabric, a landscape fabric of some sort, a retention barrier that prevents the built piece from ultimately mixing into the subsoil and keeps the gravel from just dissolving into the earth. And it keeps it a space into which stormwater can flow after being filtered through the plant roots, the soil, and the mulch, which these native plants just do such an incredible job of filtering out pollutants. Several of the native species that we see in prairies and wetlands actually uptake atrazine and hydrocarbons, The fungal communities in healthy prairie soils and native landscapes can actually serve to break down hydrocarbons and glyphosate. I mean, this is just like mind blowing, right? If we can create chemistry that can destroy, somehow the natural environment still manages to find ways to remediate, to mitigate. Now, am I seeing there on the right-hand side that we see 3 feet roughly of planting space? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, 15 feet, 3 feet is the width of where you're saying the gravel and the pipe at the bottom.
Depth of
And
planting
then
space.
So it'd be 3, 6. So it's 6 feet on each side.
Oh yeah,
of the
sorry, you're right.
drain.
3 feet right
3
here.
feet there. So this
And
is 3
15
feet.
across.
This so 3, 6, 9, 12.
From the
and this
soil
is
level
15,
here.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned as well, over the years, that is going to get thicker and thicker and thicker, and it's also going to get thinner, and you're going to pull out. You may replant. You may one day be able to burn, but not likely anytime soon.
Ask us sometime about that.
Yeah, separate conversation.
Yeah.
So Richard, excellent question, and giving us the opportunity there to demonstrate how technical this is in its design and its construction to be high functioning. So it's like a living sponge and a conveyance system for safety. It's just serving so many functions for both our human infrastructure purposes, but as well as we're seeing today for the natural purposes. Do you want to take us to some more plants, or do you want to run through these questions? We're at 10 till.
Let's go ahead and run through some of these questions. And then if Chris, if you don't mind letting us know if we've missed what we've missed on that list, then we can also
did we
hop back
miss
over.
any?
Let me start with that. Show me some silphium, okay?
Yes, that was okay. There's one over here. You're not gonna believe it. I found a rosemead. I'll try not to get hit by this bus first.
Yeah. Show me some heath aster or frost aster. Excuse me. And then, gee, where on earth would you be able to find some Johnson grass? Those are the 3 that we're missing here from our list.
Yes.
And
Okay.
as you walk, tell me more about this confluence of art and native plants, and using several of our friends today are sharing conversation about dyeing and textiles, hammering and creating art, A, through classes with you there at the Discovery Center, but B, in their own practices at home.
That's so great. Okay, well, first here's the rosemead. Have you seen a rosemead pop up in here yet, Al?
No, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, I saw this yesterday. So here's our silphium friend.
Oh, there's another one in there.
Oh, there's a little friend in there. Oh, there is. Cool. So yeah, this is just a nice big mixed salad, right? I like this silphium. It stands upright. It holds its structure pretty well. If it doesn't get too tall, and once it gets kind of settled out, it seems to hold itself up well. And I don't know if I have much else to say about this plant other than it's one of our sunflower, like silphium type plants that are native here. I guess I could say that once the petals fall off, look how beautiful that is.
Yeah, that's another winter interest bird feeder plant too. Because silphiums produce the sunflowers. That's a sunflower seed. They've got really high fat content seeds for the birds. They eat it in the winter.
You can see how tall this is. Will you stand next to it?
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, what is that, like 4 feet tall? 3.5 feet tall. So there's that one. There is Johnson grass in here that we deal with, and we might have. Oh, here's where I pulled it actually yesterday, and here's one.
Here's a seed head.
Ugh, yeah. Okay, so Johnson grass is one of our nasty invasive species that we deal with here in the Midwest.
Brush Creek is full of it, right?
Full of it.
Like 200 yards that way is Brush Creek, and it is absolutely chock-a-block full of Johnson grass.
Yeah. So we are lucky here that we have small enough landscape that we just pull it. So can you demonstrate pulling that?
Oh, sure, I'd love to.
Let's get rid of that plant.
Yeah. It comes out so easy, which is nice.
But when you're dealing with large land management, it's a nightmare.
But can I tell you the way to ID it?
Please.
Well, there's nothing to compare it to, but it's one of our only grasses that has a white mid vein. Is that showing up?
Yeah.
So the white, the stripe down the middle is white.
Bright white.
That's a pretty easy way, and it comes
I think
out
so,
easily.
too.
Our
It
native
does.
grasses do not come out.
Here's
very
the
easily.
seed head too, just so you can look at it. It's really oily.
Yeah, it's pretty.
It is pretty, but
Probably not a
pretty
garden.
bad for this.
Bad.
So we pull that. We don't spray it. Now frost aster, there's some right in here actually.
Yes, so beautiful.
Could you actually
wanna go-
bring me a piece?
Yeah,
Would you
of
mind?
course.
A little
Yes.
tiny piece.
Cydney and Alix, I'm sure we've got some folks in the audience today who would love to have you come and demonstrate how to pull Johnson grass out of their landscapes
Well, you know what?
anytime
That's a
over at
great-
my house.
Hey, you know, Chris, that's a great segue to encourage folks to join us for our work and learn day. So we'll teach you. We can't come to you, but you can come to us, and we'll teach you all the skills of identifying and best practices for removal and treating
Oh, you learning?
while you pull with us. So I
Nicely
just spun it
done.
around on you. Okay, here's our cutie little frost aster, also known as heath aster, one of our prolific aster species that show up all over the Midwest. And we don't typically keep it in all of our beds, but in situations like this, I think it's a great addition. Those little pops of white, again, likely nocturnally pollinated or wasps. Funny, I see a lot of friends share videos of frost aster covered in pollinators, but honestly, here I don't see them being utilized as much, but maybe
Well, you know why?
we have a lot of
We
resources
got
for
a
them
lot
to
more
use.
Yummy stuff. That's the last resort.
But if you like it and it is meeting your goals as a gardener, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's quite beautiful.
We don't let it stay in our real formal beds. But
No, 'cause
yeah,
it's a prolific spreader, just like asters are.
yeah.
And then was there one more, Chris? I can't remember now.
No, those were the three that we
Oh, there we go.
highlighted in our list. But you just touched on, you're just so natural at you're like Carson with the psychic questions and answers. Should we, or rather, when should we not deadhead New England asters after freeze, or heath asters, or in any of these conversations? Touch on that. Do we want
Sure.
to leave our seeds? Does that change landscape to landscape and house to house?
It definitely does. So truly it depends on your goals. It depends on your site, how prolific the plant is, what other plants you have growing with it. And our philosophy here at the Discovery Center is we want to see more of it. We leave the seed heads up. If we don't want to see more of it, we cut them right after they bloom. I did this a lot in Primrose Prairie this year, last year even, with some managing how much goldenrod spreads in that bed, because I have a particular goal and vision for the design. But out here, we leave our seed heads up for sure in the bioswales.
Yeah, our
Um,
bioswale, I think I've mentioned this several times, but it's a huge food resource out here. And so we get tons of animals all winter, all fall, all spring, all winter. These are full of animals. The reason they're not full today is because there's so many people and we're really loud. But on a quiet day, you come here full of birds, full of insects, and they're eating all year. So most of our native wildlife doesn't, here anyway, doesn't hibernate and doesn't migrate. So they are living all winter on this land. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let's touch on one last thing. I'm going to just briefly answer Christine's question. How much does it cost to build a bioswale? The ones we're looking at today are probably multi-million-dollar projects. The one in your backyard.
Thank you.
Yeah, the one in your backyard can be as simple. There are professionals in the industry, the kind of good old boys that are like, well, a ditch is a bioswale, grass is a plant, right? And the engineers and the naturalists and the landscape technicians would have a lot to say to good old boy ditch man. But in essence, any depression in your landscape at home can function as a stormwater management landscape in the same way that a bioswale does. In this sense, the bioswale has a drainage tile that then conveys the stormwater out into the stormwater system. In your site right there, it's going into Brush Creek. But better than it going directly from the KFC parking lot into Brush Creek, taking its plastic trash with it and et cetera.
Yes, absolutely.
We're out of time at this point for questions about mums instead of the millions of other options, asters, goldenrods, all these beautiful flowering plants that have high benefit. But we are 2 minutes till closing thoughts, Cydney and Alix.
Thank you all so much. I think the last thing we want to say is just thanks for joining us. Come visit us at the Discovery Center. We actually have a very fun event this weekend, Halloween. I'll send you more info on the resources later today, but it is our big Halloween event. And if you want to eat some local, hyper local insect protein,
Very
organic, gluten-free, wild caught,
yes,
ethically harvested
grasshoppers. We're talking about grasshoppers.
We're gonna feed you
all
bugs.
the grasshoppers that we catch in these bioswales.
But you don't have to eat insects if you don't want to. But do
No.
join us and say hi. I'll be a moth and she'll be a sunflower, so you'll know who we are.
And it's fun, free for all ages.
Oh, yeah,
Is it
free.
5 to 8 on
5
Saturday?
to 8 on Saturday.
Yeah.
So join us here at the Discovery Center for a spooky time.
Fantastic. Always a pleasure to be with you there at the Discovery Center. Native Landscape Mothership, home sweet home. I'm going to wrap things up for us here by showing some of our upcoming events. October 21st, this Saturday, one of our final work days in the Deep Roots Demonstration Garden. Also an opportunity to appreciate all of our volunteers, our nature advisors, our garden supporting contributors, and just in general, the Deep Roots family. We're so excited to welcome everybody into the Deep Roots Demonstration Garden, an ongoing project that is only made possible by the help of folks just like you. The 25th is the Wednesday workday, invasive species removal. Anybody more than welcome to come and pull Johnson grass, cut honeysuckle, etc. And I'm extremely excited for a project that I've been working on for November 2nd's Lunch and Learn webinar, Healthy Woodlands for Parkville, Missouri, a community funded project in sustainable regenerative forest management, funded by the Missouri Department of Conservation, only made possible by the dedicated contributions of volunteers from a multitude of partnerships. We're going to have a great conversation with a whole panel of speakers and show you a beautiful video about a project going on in Parkville. The featured event, don't miss out. Eagle Days at Les Bluffs National Wildlife Refuge is going on in December. And of course, Eagle Days is going on all around the metro. But Les Bluffs National Wildlife Refuge, one of the most amazing bird watching and wetland sites accessible in the Kansas City metro area. Cydney's going to lead a day-long adventure learning about this site, winter migrating birds that make Nat Geo blush. It's just a stunning site to be at in the wintertime. And you're going to enjoy a guided nature walk on a trail and an auto tour, a driving tour of that site itself. This field trip can include transportation to and from the Gorman Center. We're going to have a bus if you want to hop on the bus, ride with. It's out northwest, so it's a bit of a drive. But please sign up for the Eventbrite. The link will be included in your resources that are coming to you. Cydney raised her hand. Do you want to chime in on this one?
I didn't mean to, but I do just want to say I hope you will join us. It'll be so much fun. High five. High five. Yeah, join us for Les Bluffs, y'all. It's gonna be so much fun. Spend the day with me. We'll go walk around and
like 500 eagles.
500 eagles, trumpeter, swans, snow geese. It'll be a blast. Join us, and we'll send you the link in the resources.
Fantastic. And lastly, again, please do visit us here at deeproots.org for more information on all of these events, our webinars, our native gardening resources, how you can get involved. And please, while you're there, consider making a donation. Your support is critical to our work and to the continuation of these brilliant conversations. Thanks so much for joining us for Native Plants at Noon at the Discovery Center.